March of 2019, a 34-year-old nurse named Alicia Ramirez sat at her dining room table in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, and opened her mortgage statement. She did this every month. She had done it every month for the previous 4 years, ever since she and her husband Marco had bought their first home. The statement always looked the same: a payment of $1,947, a breakdown of principal and interest and escrow, a remaining balance that never seemed to move. But this time, something was different. This time, Alicia decided to actually read the amortization schedule her lender had included in the original closing documents, the one she had signed without looking at, and what she found made her stop breathing for a moment. Alicia and Marco had borrowed $320,000 at 4.5% interest over 30 years. Their monthly payment of principal and interest, before taxes and insurance, was $1,621. In 4 years, they had made 48 payments. They had sent the bank a total of $77,808, and yet their loan balance had only dropped from $320,000 to $306,400. $13,600 of principal paid down, $64,200 of pure interest. The bank had taken nearly $5 in interest for every $1 of principal reduction. And Alicia realized, sitting at that table with a cup of cold coffee, that she and Marco did not own their home. They were renting it from the bank at an interest rate that guaranteed the bank would collect more than $250,000 in pure profit before they ever held the deed free and clear. Alicia Ramirez is not a fool. She is not bad with money. She is a registered nurse who works 12-hour shifts in a cardiac unit. Her husband is a high school math teacher. They have 2 children, a Toyota Camry and a Costco membership. They are the kind of people financial advice columns describe as doing everything right, and they were being systematically, mathematically, and legally stripped of their future wealth by a financial instrument they had been told was their gateway to the American dream. Your mortgage is not a loan. It is a weapon, and the bank is holding it against your head every single month. Not because the bank is staffed by cartoon villains, because the math is designed that way. The amortization table, the interest calculation, the refinancing incentive, the secondary market. Every piece of the mortgage system has been engineered over decades to extract the maximum possible wealth from you before you figure out what is happening. And most people never figure it out. They make their payments on time, every month, for 30 years, and at the end of it, they have paid the bank 2 or 3 times what they originally borrowed. They call it home ownership. The bank calls it yield. I'm going to show you exactly how this weapon works. I'm going to show you the math, the psychology, the institutional machinery, and the traps that catch everyone from first-time buyers to people on their 3rd refinance. And then, I am going to show you how to disarm it, not with vague advice about paying extra when you can, with specific dollar amounts, specific strategies, and specific numbers that turn the mortgage from a weapon the bank uses against you into a tool you use to build actual wealth. This is the manual the mortgage industry hopes you never read. I have spent years in finance, and I have seen the same pattern repeat across every income level, every city, every demographic. The couple making $60,000 a year who bought too much house and are drowning in interest. The family making $200,000 a year who refinanced 3 times and owe more now than they did 10 years ago. The retiree who thought the house was paid off and discovered a home equity line they forgot they opened. The math is the same every time, only the dollar amounts change. And after seeing this pattern enough times, you stop blaming the borrower. You start seeing the system for what it is. I have sat across the table from a mortgage broker who admitted, off the record, that his commission was higher when he sold a 30-year loan instead of a 15-year loan. I have read the investor presentations from mortgage servicing companies that use the phrase customer lifetime value to describe how much interest they expect to extract from a borrower before that borrower refinances, defaults, or pays off the loan. I have run the amortization math on hundreds of real mortgages and watched the same devastating numbers appear again and again. The mortgage industry is not a conspiracy. It is a machine that converts your labor, your discipline, and your dreams of homeownership into shareholder returns. And the machine works because almost nobody reads the manual. Let me give you the numbers that define the battlefield. The average mortgage balance in the United States is approximately $250,000. The average interest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage, as of mid-2024, is approximately 6.8%. At that rate, over the full 30-year term, the borrower will pay approximately $337,000 in total interest. That means a $250,000 house will cost approximately $587,000 by the time it is actually owned. The interest alone is 1.35 times the original loan amount. And that is at today's rates. Millions of Americans are sitting on older mortgages at 3 or 4%, but they are also sitting on higher balances. And the total lifetime interest on the average mortgage held in this country exceeds $200,000 per household. Now consider what happens during the first decade of that mortgage. In year 1, roughly 70% of every payment goes to interest. Only 30% reduces the principal. By year 5, you have paid approximately $81,000 in total payments on a $250,000 loan at 6.8%. And your balance has dropped by only about $16,000. The bank has collected $65,000 in interest, and you have barely made a dent. By year 10, you have paid approximately $162,000 in total payments, and your balance has dropped by only about $38,000. The bank has collected $124,000 in interest. You have been paying for a decade, and you still owe 85% of what you borrowed. This is not an accident. This is the amortization curve. And the amortization curve is the single most powerful wealth extraction mechanism ever sold to the American public as a path to prosperity. I want to reframe what a mortgage actually is, because the language we use to talk about mortgages is deliberately misleading. We say, I got a mortgage. We say, the bank gave me a loan. We say, I am paying off my house. All of these phrases position the borrower as the active party and the bank as the passive facilitator. The reality is the opposite. A mortgage is not you borrowing money. A mortgage is the bank buying a cash flow stream from you, your future labor, your future earnings, your next 30 years of disciplined monthly payments at a massive discount. The bank gives you $300,000 today. In exchange, you agree to give the bank somewhere between $550,000 and $600,000 over the next 30 years. That is not a loan. That is a purchase. The bank is buying a revenue stream from you at a discount, the same way an investor buys a bond or an annuity. And the genius of the system is that you are told to feel grateful for the opportunity. Here is the math that proves it. If you borrow $300,000 at 6.5% for 30 years, your monthly principal and interest payment is $1,896. Over 30 years, you will make 360 payments. The total of those payments is $682,560. The bank invested $300,000. It received $682,000 back. That is a return of $382,000 on a $300,000 investment. A 127% return. Not annualized, but total. If you annualize it, the bank's internal rate of return is exactly the interest rate you agreed to, 6.5%. But here is what matters. The bank gets that return before you get anything. In the first 15 years, you pay roughly $262,000 in interest. The bank has nearly doubled its money before you have even paid down half the principal. If you sell the house, refinance, or default at any point in the first 2 decades, the bank has already extracted the vast majority of its profit. You, on the other hand, may or may not have any equity at all. Let me show you the amortization weapon in detail, because this is where the damage happens and almost nobody looks. Take a $400,000 mortgage at 6.75% for 30 years. The monthly principal and interest payment is $2,594. In the first month, the interest portion is $2,250. The principal portion is $344. That means 87% of your first payment goes to the bank's profit. 13% reduces what you owe. Now fast forward 5 years. You have made 60 payments. You have sent the bank $155,640. Your loan balance has dropped from $400,000 to $376,000. You have paid down $24,000 of principal. You have paid $131,000 $600 in interest. For every dollar of debt reduction, you have paid $5.48 in interest. Think about what else $131,000 could have done for your family. That is a college education. That is 5 years of maxed out retirement contributions. That is a rental property down payment, and it is gone, transferred from your checking account to the bank's balance sheet, month after month, automated and invisible. Now fast forward to year 10. You have made 120 payments. Total paid, $311,280. Loan balance remaining, $341,000. Principal paid down, $59,000. Interest paid, $252,000. You are a decade into homeownership, and the bank has collected more than $250,000 in interest. You still owe 85% of what you borrowed. And here is the detail that will make you physically ill. In month 120, the interest portion of your payment is still $1,918. That is 74% of your payment. After 10 years of on-time payments, nearly 3/4 of every dollar you send still goes to interest. The bank designed the amortization schedule to front-load the interest. This is not a secret. It is the defining feature of a standard amortizing loan, but the consequences of that design are rarely explained to borrowers in terms they can feel. You are not just paying interest. You are paying most of the interest first, which means the equity you think you are building does not actually start accumulating until the back half of the loan. And most Americans do not stay in the same mortgage for 30 years. They sell, they refinance, they move. Every time they do, they reset the amortization clock, and the interest front-loading starts over. The bank collects its profit early. You collect your equity late. If you never reach the late part, the bank wins. Now, let me talk about the equity trap, because this is the argument people use to convince themselves the mortgage is working. They say, my house is worth more than I paid for it, so I am building wealth. They look at Zillow. They see the estimate has gone up by $100,000. They feel rich. They feel smart. They feel like the mortgage was a good deal. Here is the reality. Your house appreciating in value is not the same thing as you building wealth. If your house goes up by $100,000, you have not made $100,000. You have a theoretical gain on an illiquid asset that costs between 7 and 10% of its value to sell. On a $400,000 house, selling costs, real estate commissions, transfer taxes, title insurance, attorney fees, repairs demanded by the buyer, concessions at closing, typically run between $30,000 and $40,000. So your $100,000 gain is really a $60,000 gain. And that $60,000 is only real if you sell. If you stay in the house, the appreciation is paper wealth. It does not pay your bills. It does not fund your retirement. It is a number on a screen. But it gets worse, because while your house was appreciating, the bank was still collecting interest. If your house went up by $100,000 over 7 years, and during those 7 years, you paid $180,000 in mortgage interest, you are not up $100,000. You are down $80,000 in real cash flow. With a paper gain, you cannot access without selling the asset you live in. The math of real equity versus perceived equity is brutal, and almost nobody runs it. Let me introduce you to someone who learned this the hard way. His name is Reggie Thompson. Reggie bought a house outside Atlanta in 2015 for $230,000. He put 3.5% down with an FHA loan. His interest rate was 4.25%. By 2022, the house was worth $360,000. Reggie had made $130,000 in equity. He felt great. He told his friends he was a genius for buying when he did. What Reggie did not calculate was the other side of the ledger. Over those 7 years, he had paid approximately $62,000 in mortgage interest. He had paid another $14,000 in FHA mortgage insurance premiums because his down payment was below 20%, and FHA loans carry mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. He had replaced the roof for $9,000. He had replaced the HVAC system for $7,000. He had spent roughly $12,000 on other maintenance, painting, plumbing, a new water heater, landscaping. His total cost of ownership, not counting property taxes, was approximately $104,000, His paper gain was $130,000. His real gain, before selling costs, was $26,000. After selling costs of roughly $28,000, Reggie would have lost $2,000. He owned the house for 7 years, made every payment on time, watched the market value soar, and he was underwater, in real terms. Reggie's story is not unusual. It is the norm for anyone who buys with a low down payment and sells within the first decade. The system is designed to make you feel wealthy, while the bank extracts the actual wealth. People never add up both sides of the ledger. They look at the appreciation number. They ignore the interest, the maintenance, the insurance, the transaction costs. The bank counts every dollar. You should too. Now let me tell you about the refinance scam, because this is where the weapon gets reloaded and fired again at point-blank range. In late 2020 and early 2021, when mortgage rates dropped below 3%, millions of Americans refinanced. They were told they were saving money. Their monthly payment went down. They got to skip a payment or two. The mortgage broker who called them was friendly and helpful. The paperwork was free. What almost nobody was told is that refinancing resets the amortization clock, and the bank makes more money on a refinance than it does on the original loan. Here is how it works. Suppose you have a $300,000 mortgage at 5% that you have been paying for 8 years. Your remaining balance is approximately $257,000. Your current monthly principal and interest payment is $1,610. You have about 22 years remaining. Over those 22 years, you will pay approximately $168,000 in additional interest. Total remaining cost to own the house, approximately $425,000. Now the bank calls and offers you a refinance at 3.25% for 30 years. Your new payment will be $1,118. That is almost $500 less per month. You will save $500 every month. You feel smart. You sign. What just happened? You reset the clock from 22 years back to 30 years. Your new loan balance is $257,000. Over the new 30-year term at 3.25%, you will pay approximately $146,000 in total interest. Add that to the roughly $110,000 in interest you already paid during the first 8 years of the original loan, and your total lifetime interest across both loans is approximately $256,000. If you had simply kept the original loan and paid it off over the remaining 22 years, your total interest would have been approximately $278,000. So, you did save money, about $22,000 over the total life of the loans. Not nothing, but also not the fortune the lower monthly payment implied. Now consider what happens if you take that $500 in monthly savings and spend it instead of applying it to the principal. If you do that, you have extended your repayment period by 8 years, kept your debt alive for an extra 96 months, and your total wealth position, your net worth, when the loan is finally gone, is actually worse because you consumed the savings rather than reinvesting them. The bank, meanwhile, has locked in another 30 years of payment streams. They would rather earn 3.25% for 30 years than 5% for 22, because the longer the term, the more interest they collect. They know most people who refinance will spend the savings, not invest them. The bank is playing chess. You are playing checkers. Consider a more extreme version. Take someone who has refinanced 3 times over a 20-year period. Each time, they took a lower rate, a lower payment, and a new 30-year term. They started with a 30-year mortgage in 2004. They refinanced in 2010, 2016, and 2021. They made payments for 20 years, and at the end of those 20 years, they still have 25 years remaining on the current loan. They have been paying a mortgage for 2 decades, and they are further from owning the house than when they started. The total interest paid across all 4 loans exceeds $400,000. The house is worth $500,000. And they do not own it. The bank has extracted nearly the full value of the home in interest, and the deed still has the bank's name on it. This is not a hypothetical. This is millions of American households, and the mortgage industry calls these people loyal customers. Let me take you behind the curtain and show you who actually owns your mortgage, because this is where the system exposes its true nature. When you close on a home loan, you sign documents with a lender. Maybe it is Wells Fargo. Maybe it is Rocket Mortgage. Maybe it is a local credit union. That lender collects your first few payments, and then, In almost every case, they sell your loan. They sell it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, the government-sponsored enterprises that buy and securitize most American mortgages. Fannie and Freddie bundle your loan with thousands of others into a mortgage-backed security and sell shares of that security to investors, pension funds, insurance companies, foreign governments, hedge funds. Your mortgage is now an asset in someone else's portfolio. Your monthly payment is a dividend stream. Your interest rate is their yield. Your loan servicer, the company you send your check to and call when you have a problem, does not own your mortgage and does not care about you. The servicer gets paid a small fee, typically around 25 basis points of the loan balance annually, to process your payments, manage your escrow account, and handle delinquencies. Their incentive is to do the absolute minimum required by law and their contract with the investor. They do not profit when you pay off your loan early. They profit when your loan exists, when it keeps producing payments, when it stays in the pool feeding the security. The servicer's ideal customer is someone who makes every payment on time, never asks questions, never pays extra, and keeps the loan for the full 30 years. That is the customer lifetime value I mentioned earlier. And that is exactly what the system is designed to produce. The entire secondary market infrastructure is built on the assumption that you will behave like a predictable cash flow stream. The investors who buy mortgage-backed securities use models that predict prepayment speeds, default rates, and average loan durations. Their returns depend on you doing exactly what the amortization table says. If you pay extra, if you refinance strategically, if you pay off the loan early, you break their model. You reduce their return. You become an unprofitable customer, and the entire system, the marketing, the payment coupons, the friendly servicing calls, the refinance offers, is designed to prevent you from doing exactly that. Let me talk about the psychology of the mortgage trap, because the math alone is not enough to explain why so many intelligent people stay locked in the weapon for decades. The mortgage industry has mastered the art of making you focus on the wrong number. They want you to obsess over the monthly payment. Can I afford the payment? Is the payment lower than my rent? The monthly payment is a distraction. The number that actually matters is the total cost, and the total cost is almost never discussed. When you buy a house, the mortgage broker shows you a closing disclosure with a number called total of payments, buried on page 3. That number is the sum of all 360 payments. If you keep the loan for the full term on a $400,000 loan at 6.75%, that number is $934,000. But nobody talks about it. Nobody says, you are buying this $400,000 house, and you are actually going to pay $934,000 for it. Are you comfortable with that? If they did, people would behave differently, and the industry knows this. The other piece of psychology is the emotional attachment to the house. We are told from childhood that buying a home is the responsible thing to do. It is the American dream. The house becomes wrapped up in our identity, our sense of accomplishment, our vision of the future. And once you have that emotional attachment, you will defend the mortgage, even when the math argues against it. You will tell yourself the appreciation makes up for the interest. The tax deduction changes the calculation. You can always refinance. You will tell yourself anything except the truth, which is that you signed a contract that pays the bank 2 or 3 times what you borrowed, and the only way to change that outcome is to change your behavior. I am not telling you that renting is better than buying. That is not the argument I am making. In many markets, over long enough time horizons, buying does outperform renting. The mortgage is not inherently evil. It is a tool, but it is a tool that was designed by banks to benefit banks. And if you use it the way the banks want you to use it, 30-year term, minimum payments, periodic refinances, you will transfer a fortune in interest to the financial system. The question is not whether to buy. The question is whether you understand the rules of the game you are playing. And I am telling you that most homeowners do not understand the rules. They are playing checkers on a chessboard, and the bank is moving pieces they cannot even see. Here is how you disarm the weapon. This is the actionable plan, and I want you to treat it like a checklist. Every dollar of mortgage interest you do not pay is a dollar you keep. Every year you shave off the term is a year of freedom the bank does not get to profit from. The strategies are simple. The execution requires discipline. The payoff is measured in 6 figures. First, the extra principal payment. This is the single most powerful weapon you have, and almost nobody uses it consistently. On a $300,000 mortgage at 6.5% for 30 years, adding one extra principal payment per year. That is 1/12 of your monthly payment applied directly to principal each month, or one full extra payment once a year, reduces the loan term by approximately 4 years and saves approximately $52,000 in interest. That is not an estimate. That is the amortization math. One extra payment a year, 4 years of your life back, $52,000 that stays in your pocket instead of the bank's. If you can manage $200 per month in extra principal on that same $300,000 loan, you reduce the term by roughly 6.5 years and save approximately $87,000 in interest. $200 a month. The cost of a streaming subscription, a couple of takeout dinners, and a gym membership you do not use. Redirect it to principal, and the bank loses $87,000 of its projected profit from your loan. Second, the bi-weekly payment hack. Instead of making one monthly payment, you make half of your monthly payment every 2 weeks. Because there are 52 weeks in a year, you end up making 26 half payments, which equals 13 full payments. That extra full payment each year, applied directly to principal, reduces a 30-year loan to approximately 25 years and saves tens of thousands in interest. Most lenders will set this up for you at no cost. Some charge a small setup fee. Even with the fee, the math is overwhelming. And here is the psychological advantage. You never feel the extra payment because it is baked into your paycheck cycle. You are paying the same amount out of every bi-weekly pay period, so your budget does not change, but you are accelerating the payoff by 5 years. Third, the 15-year mortgage. This is the nuclear option, and it is not for everyone. But I want you to understand the math because it is staggering. A $300,000 mortgage at 6.5% for 30 years costs approximately $382,000 in total interest. The same mortgage at 6.0% for 15 years. 15-year loans typically carry slightly lower rates. Costs approximately $155,000 in total interest. That is a difference of $227,000. Let me say that again. By choosing the 15-year term instead of the 30-year term, you save $227,000 in interest. That is enough to fund a child's entire college education. That is the difference between retiring at 62 and retiring at 67. The objection to the 15-year mortgage is obvious. The monthly payment is higher. On that $300,000 loan, the 30-year payment is $1,897. The 15-year payment is $2,532. That is a difference of $635 per month. For many households, that is a meaningful stretch, and I am not going to tell you to stretch beyond what your budget can handle. What I am going to tell you is that if you can make the 15-year work, the wealth impact is transformative. And even if you cannot make the full 15-year payment, you can simulate it by taking the 30-year loan and making extra principal payments that bring the effective term down to 20 years or 18 years or whatever your budget allows. Every dollar of extra principal is a dollar of interest you never pay. Fourth, strategic refinancing. Refinancing is not inherently bad. What is bad is refinancing without understanding the amortization clock and the total cost comparison. When you refinance, you should run 2 numbers. Number 1, the total remaining interest on your current loan, if you keep it to term. Number 2, the total interest on the new loan, plus the interest you have already paid on the current loan. Do not compare monthly payments. Compare total remaining cost. And if you refinance, do not reset to a new 30-year term. Ask for a 25-year term, a 20-year term, whatever keeps your payoff date the same or earlier than your original loan. The bank will not offer this. You have to demand it. The bank wants the 30-year reset because it means more interest. You want the shorter term because it means less. Here is a specific example. You have a $300,000 loan at 5.5% with 23 years remaining. Your remaining interest is approximately $223,000. You are offered a refinance at 3.75% for 30 years. The new loan's total interest is approximately $200,000. But wait, you already paid roughly $120,000 in interest on the original loan. Your total lifetime interest between the 2 loans will be $320,000. If you instead refinance to a 20-year term at 3.625%, your total interest on the new loan is approximately $122,000. Combined with the interest already paid, Your total is $242,000. You save $78,000 compared to the 30-year refinance. The monthly payment is higher, but the wealth impact is enormous. Run the total cost, always. The monthly payment is the bait. The total cost is the trap. Fifth, the lump sum principal payment. If you receive a bonus, a tax refund, an inheritance, or any windfall, applying even a portion of it to your mortgage principal can have an outsized impact because it reduces the principal early when the interest calculation is working against you hardest. A $10,000 lump sum payment in year 2 of a 30-year mortgage at 6.5% saves approximately $23,000 in interest and shortens the loan by about 18 months. The same $10,000 applied in year 20 saves about $5,000 in interest and shortens the loan by about 8 months. The earlier the extra payment, the more powerful it is. Compound interest works against you on a mortgage. Compound principal reduction works for you. Get the principal down early, and the interest has less to feed on. Now, I want to address the objections, because these are the things people say to convince themselves. The weapon is not a weapon, and I want you to hear why each one is wrong. Objection number 1. Mortgage interest is tax deductible. This is the most expensive rationalization in American personal finance. Yes, mortgage interest on up to $750,000 of debt is deductible if you itemize, but you only benefit from the deduction to the extent that your total itemized deductions exceed the standard deduction. Overlay, typewriter $29,200, SIMD lower third vertical bar, pan left. The standard deduction for a married couple in 2024 is $29,200. If your mortgage interest, plus state and local taxes, plus charitable contributions, does not exceed that threshold, you get zero tax benefit from your mortgage interest. Zero. And even if you do exceed the threshold, you are only saving your marginal tax rate on the interest above the standard deduction. If you are in the 24% bracket, and you have $5,000 of deductible mortgage interest above the standard deduction, you save $1,200 in taxes, but you paid $5,000 in interest to get that deduction. You spent $5 to save $1. That is not a tax strategy. That is a marketing slogan the mortgage industry used to sell loans. Objection number 2. But renting is throwing money away. This is the emotional counterpunch that shuts down rational analysis. Renting is not throwing money away. Renting is paying for shelter. You are paying for a roof over your head, and in exchange, you bear none of the maintenance costs, none of the property tax risk, none of the transaction costs, and none of the interest burden. Yes, the rent payment does not build equity, but the mortgage interest payment also does not build equity. And for the first decade of a mortgage, most of your payment is interest. The question is not, is renting throwing money away? The question is, in my specific market, with my specific time horizon and my specific financial situation, does the total cost of buying compare favorably to the total cost of renting after accounting for interest, maintenance, insurance, property taxes, transaction costs, and the opportunity cost of the down payment? That is a math question. Run the math. Do not let a slogan decide your financial future. Objection number 3. I cannot afford extra mortgage payments. I hear this one all the time, and I want to take it seriously because cash flow is real and budgets are tight. But I also want to challenge it because in many cases, I cannot afford extra payments really means I have not looked at my spending to find the extra money. The average American household spends approximately $1,000 per month on non-essential categories: dining out, streaming services, subscription boxes, impulse Amazon purchases, premium coffee, unused gym memberships, lottery tickets. That does not mean you should live like a monk. It means that finding $100 per month or $200 per month is almost always possible if you audit your spending and make deliberate choices. And $100 per month in extra principal on a 30-year mortgage at 6.5% saves approximately $28,000 in interest and cuts the term by about 2.5 years. That is a real return on a small behavioral change. The bank is counting on you not making that change. Prove them wrong. Here is the analogy I want you to carry with you. Your mortgage is a weapon. The amortization table is the trigger. The interest rate is the caliber. The term is the magazine capacity, and the bank is holding it. Every month when the payment processes, the weapon fires. A portion of your labor, your time, your life energy is converted into bank profit. The weapon fires automatically. You do not have to do anything for it to fire. The default setting is fire every month for 30 years. The only way to stop it is to intervene, to pay extra, to refinance strategically, to shorten the term. The bank designed the weapon. They calibrated the trigger, they loaded the magazine, but you decide how long the weapon stays, pointed at you. You turn the weapon into a tool by taking control of the amortization, by deciding how much interest you are willing to pay, and over how many years, by treating the mortgage not as a permanent condition, but as a problem to be solved, a debt to be eliminated, a wealth transfer to be reversed. Every extra dollar of principal you pay is a dollar the bank does not get to compound into more interest. Every year you shave off the term is a year of payments the bank does not receive. And when the loan hits zero, when the deed is in your name and the bank's lien is released, the weapon is disarmed entirely. Alicia Ramirez, the nurse from Phoenix, did not just stare at her amortization schedule and despair. She acted. She and Marco sat down that same weekend and ran the numbers. They calculated that if they added $300 per month in extra principal, money they found by canceling a streaming bundle they barely watched, reducing their restaurant spending from 3 nights a week to 1, and redirecting Marco's annual coaching stipend. They would pay off their loan in 21 years instead of 30. They would save approximately $108,000 in interest. Their youngest child would be in college when the mortgage disappeared, and the money that had been going to the bank every month would go to tuition instead, or retirement, or experiences they had been deferring. Alicia also refinanced in 2021 when rates dropped. But she did not fall for the 30-year reset. She refinanced to a 20-year term at 2.875%. Her payment went up slightly, from $1,947 to $2,031, but her total remaining interest dropped from roughly $220,000 to about $70,000. She saved $150,000 with one phone call, and she only made that call because she finally looked at the numbers. The mortgage industry is counting on you to be like the old Alicia, the one who opened the statement, glanced at the balance, and closed it, the one who assumed the math was fair because it was legal, the one who confused making payments with making progress. The new Alicia runs the numbers every 6 months. She knows exactly how much of each payment goes to principal and how much to interest. She has a payoff date circled on her calendar, and the bank is losing money on her loan. The bank designed the weapon. They spent decades engineering the amortization curve, the marketing psychology, the refinance incentives, the secondary market plumbing. They built a machine that extracts billions of dollars a year from American households, legally and automatically. And the machine works on everyone who does not understand it. But the moment you understand it, the machine stops working on you. The weapon is still there, but you are holding it now. You decide when it fires. You decide when it stops. You decide how much of your life you are willing to trade for the bank's profit margin. You do not need a finance degree to disarm your mortgage. You need a calculator, a copy of your amortization schedule, and the willingness to look at uncomfortable numbers. Add up the total interest, calculate the cost of doing nothing, calculate the savings of doing something, and then act. Not next year, not when rates drop, not when you get a raise. Now, the weapon fires every month. Every month you wait, the bank collects another interest payment you could have prevented. You now know how the weapon works. The amortization, front-loading, the equity illusion, the refinance reset, the secondary market incentive structure, the psychology of the monthly payment. You know the math that proves the mortgage is a wealth extraction mechanism, dressed as a wealth-building tool. You know the strategies that reverse the extraction, extra principal, bi-weekly payments, 15-year terms, strategic refinancing, lump sum payments, and you know the objections and why each one is wrong. The only question left is what you will do with this information. The bank is betting you will do nothing, that you will finish watching, feel briefly outraged, and then return to your routine, making the minimum payment, trusting the system, ignoring the math. The bank's entire business model is built on that bet, and the bank is right far more often than it is wrong. But the bank has never met you. The bank does not know that you just spent an hour learning how the weapon is aimed at your head, and that you now have the blueprint to disarm it. Prove the bank Wrong. Run your numbers, make the extra payment, shorten the term, disarm the weapon. The bank will be fine. There are millions of borrowers who will keep the machine running, but you will not be one of them. Your mortgage will stop being a weapon and become a tool you use to build the future you wanted. The bank designed the weapon, but you hold the trigger now.